Before we begin, I need to warn you. This story contains mature emotional themes. It deals with grief, loneliness, identity, betrayal, and the kind of choices that can change a life forever. If that makes you uncomfortable, you may want to stop watching now, because what happened after my son left was something I never saw coming. I thought losing him was the worst thing that could happen. I was wrong. The worst part came after. The silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It fills your chest. It presses against your ribs. It sits in the empty chair across the table and dares you to look at it. And then she came back into my life. I thought she was just trying to help. I thought she was just being a friend. I never imagined she would become the one person who made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. And by the end of this story, I had to choose between the life I used to know and the woman I was becoming. Stay with me, because this is where everything changed. The house had never felt this quiet, not even after my divorce, not even after the worst nights of my marriage. This was different. This silence had weight. Every room carried memories. The kitchen still smelled faintly like coffee and toast. The hallway still echoed with footsteps that were no longer there. I found myself standing outside his room more often than I wanted to admit. My hand would hover near the doorknob. Sometimes I opened it, sometimes I didn't. When I did, the emptiness hit me all over again. The bed made, the curtains half open, the chair by the desk pushed slightly back, like he had just stepped out, like he might come back. But he never did. Days passed, then weeks. I buried myself in routines: coffee, cleaning, work, dinner alone, sleep without rest, repeat. But grief doesn't disappear because you stay busy. It waits, and every night, it found me. But one evening, someone knocked on my door, and that knock changed everything. When I opened the door, Elena stood there, my oldest friend. She looked exactly how I remembered her. Calm eyes, soft voice, the kind of presence that made a room feel safer. She held a paper bag in one hand. "I brought dinner," she said. I stared at her for a moment. "You didn't have to." "I know." That was Elena, never dramatic, never intrusive, just there. She stepped inside. The smell of warm bread and soup filled the house. For the first time in weeks, it smelled like comfort. We sat at the kitchen table. At first, the conversation was ordinary. Work, neighbours, the weather. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. "You're not okay?" I tried to smile. "I'm fine." She didn't believe me. "I know you," she said quietly. And that was the moment the wall cracked. Not broke. Cracked. I looked down at my hands. I don't even know who I am anymore. Her hand moved across the table. She rested it lightly over mine. That touch. Simple. Friendly. But something about it stayed with me. Long after she left. I told myself it meant nothing. But the next time she came over, I started noticing things I shouldn't have. Eleanor started visiting more often. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes wine, sometimes nothing but herself. Those nights became the part of the day I waited for. We talked for hours about life, about pain, about the things women are told to bury. She told me about her divorce, the betrayal, the loneliness. I told her things I hadn't told anyone: the shame, the guilt, the feeling that my life had collapsed into something unrecognizable. She never judged me. Not once. Instead, she listened. And sometimes, she would look at me in a way that made me feel seen, not as a mother, not as a failure, not as someone broken, as a woman. That realization frightened me, because it had been years since anyone looked at me that way. One night I started crying. I didn't even know why. Maybe because I had been holding everything in for too long. Elena moved closer. She wrapped her arms around me, and I let her. The embrace lasted longer than it should have, long enough for my breathing to slow, long enough for my thoughts to turn dangerous. That was the first moment I wondered, why did being close to her feel so different? After that night, everything shifted. Nothing obvious. Nothing anyone else would notice. But inside me, something had started moving. I thought about her too often, the sound of her laugh, the warmth of her hand, the way she said my name. I told myself it was because I was lonely. That had to be it. But loneliness doesn't explain the way my heart raced when she texted. It doesn't explain why I changed clothes before she came over, or why I caught myself looking in the mirror. I hadn't done that in years. One evening, we sat on the porch as the sun went down. She looked beautiful in the fading light. And then a thought crossed my mind. What if this is more than friendship? I hated the thought. I pushed it away. But once a thought enters your mind, it doesn't leave easily. Then one night, Elena said something that made it impossible to keep pretending. It was raining that night. She came over soaked, laughing as she stepped inside. I handed her a towel. Our fingers brushed. The moment froze. She looked at me. And this time, I saw it. Not friendship. Something deeper. Something she had been trying to hide. "I need to tell you something," she said. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" She took a breath. "I think I've been falling for you." The room went silent. I couldn't breathe. I should have pulled away. I should have said this was a mistake, but I didn't. Because somewhere deep inside, I had been waiting to hear those words, and then she kissed me. It was soft, slow, hesitant, like we were both waiting for the other person to stop. Neither of us did. The moment lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. When she pulled back, I couldn't even look at her. I felt fear, relief, guilt, comfort, and something else, truth. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Not because of the kiss, because of what it revealed, that maybe the person I thought I was never the full story. But the next morning, reality came crashing down. The next day, I panicked. I ignored her calls. I ignored her messages. I told myself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but every excuse sounded emptier than the last. Then Peyton came over. She took one look at me and said, "What happened?" I froze, because people always notice more than we think. I finally told someone, not everything, but enough. And instead of shock, she asked, "Do you care about her?" The answer came before I could stop it. Yes, that was the truth. Now I had a choice, run from it, or face who I was becoming. I called Elena that night. She answered on the first ring. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For what?" "For being afraid." Her voice softened. "It's okay to be afraid." That's when I realized this story was never really about becoming someone else. It was about finally allowing myself to become who I had been hiding from. Healing doesn't always look how we expect. Sometimes it arrives through friendship, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes through a love we never imagined. I don't have every answer. I still don't know exactly what this means for my future. But I know this. For the first time in years, I am no longer living for everyone else. I am finally learning how to live for myself. And maybe that is where every real story begins. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. What would you do if your life took a turn you never expected? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories.